Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, May 28th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here. Hope we had a great long weekend in the States full of, grilling, gardening, going to a ball game, spending time with friends and family. Something good, hopefully, from the long weekend. On this episode, we'll discuss the unfortunate injury to Ronald Acuña Jr. We've been here before, and it's not a fun place to be. We had a major DFA. Victor Robles has been let go by the Nationals. He's in limbo right now.
Major.
It's important on this show. It was the number of ways I was notified hit an all-time high. It used to just be tweets. Now it's Twitter.
Discord.
Now it's Discord. Get in the Discord. Now it's text. I got some text about it. It's like, oh, geez. Like, this is really important to folks. So I put it second on the rundown, so we'll get to it. Ángel Hernández announced his retirement. That happened over the long weekend as well. So people are pretty happy around baseball because of that. We got some injury updates beyond Acuña. We have some news on Roki Sasaki. We have updated starting pitcher rankings that Eno put up last week. So we'll talk about a few big risers and fallers there. And as we do to start every week, we'll look at where the money went from a fantasy baseball perspective over the weekend, talk about some players that were picked up, and talk about a few players that were let go. Although this week's group of players that were cut were pretty much all demoted and injured. So might be a shorter drop zone than usual this week, but lots of other stuff to get us through this episode. As I mentioned, get into the Discord. You can heckle me about Victor Robles as much as you'd like. Absolutely free. You can connect with other people about other things too. That might be the better way to use our Discord. Let's start with Ronald Acuña Jr. It is a torn ACL, suffered while running the bases, kind of slipped between second and third. It's the other knee. It's not the same knee that he tore back in 2021, but his season is over. And I saw a lot of different responses on Twitter from Braves fans suggesting that maybe Alex Anthopoulos should do a soft sell at the trade deadline, which, given what happened last time Acuña went down, seems a little bit of an overreaction. They ended up winning the World Series that year. Much harder without him than with him, of course, but there's a lot here. I mean, there's the short-term implications, the long-term implications. I want to just ask you first, as we got more information about Acuña's season, we talked about it maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, wondered where the power was. It really still hadn't shown up. And a 365 slugging percentage now will be the final number in the ledger for 2024. Only the 4 homers in the 49 games he was able to play. Just a shell of the player that he was during the MVP season that he put up in 2023. So just aside from the injury, what do you make of this? Because he was running. He was 16 for 19 as a base stealer. And the knee issue he had back during the spring seemingly wouldn't have caused him that much problem from a power perspective if he was able to run that much. At least that's how my mind works. So as we try and kind of figure this out, like, what's next for Acuña in terms of expectations once he goes through that long road of recovery?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the power outage is just a big deal. And if you actually kind of look back, the weird thing is that his ground ball rate has been slowly increasing since 2021. And in the middle, there's a 41 home run year. So I want to blame the ground ball rate. And I think that has something to do with it. There's something going on with the shape of his swing. But that's the sort of analysis that's, I think, the hardest to do from the outside. I mean, maybe you could get some moving images up next to each other and spot something different in his swing. My personal theory is that he's being pitched differently and hasn't adjusted back to it yet. But we're going to have this big missing, 400 plate appearances that he would have had, in which he might have made the adjustment. And instead, we're going to be wondering what the reason was, and if he would have made the adjustment, and what happened in the alternate universe where he stayed healthy. But just the fact that he was able to have a 49.5% ground ball rate and hit 41 homers means that you can't fixate too much on the ground ball rate. The fact that he came back and stole 73 bases after the last surgery makes you think like he should be fine to come back again. There's another note on the rundown today that I'm not going to say just yet, but there's ample evidence that stolen bases is 50% ability and 50% vibes, like there's a bunch of evidence that, like, if your team starts stealing in spring, they're going to steal all year and everybody's going to be in on the party, so I kind of expect that Acuna will come back and steal bases. He might be a little slower again. He was a little bit slower after the last one.
I mean, he'll come back. He'll be 27 next season. You think about the timeline when he got hurt in 21, ended up costing him most of April. He got back in late April of 2022, so it wasn't a full season his first year back. The slash line looked a lot more like what we've seen this year. He hit 266 with a 351 OBP, 413 slug coming off the injury, and was 29 for 40 as a base stealer. That was the last season with the previous rules, the smaller bases, the no limitation on disengagements for pitchers or anything like that. So completely different setup. But yeah, that's when that batted ball profile shifted and has kind of stayed in that ground ball heavy mode ever since. And the other big difference, of course, in the MVP season, he cut his strikeout rate in half. How did he did that? I will never know. But everything else in his career points to 23% being more or less his skills baseline too. So really bad news for the Braves, disappointing for just baseball fans in general. And it leaves them in a position now where Adam Duvall probably plays a lot more. I would imagine Alex Anthopoulos will go the other direction. He'll do what he did last time. He'll find relatively inexpensive veterans to acquire between now and the trade deadline later this season. He'll take some more time probably to assess the magnitude of the need, try to see what he can get out of Jared Kelenic, see what Adam Duvall has left in the tank, right? And try to make a decision from there. They have quality up and down this lineup. They can find a way to continue working around this. And the other part of why they would keep going for it is look at how well Chris Sale and Max Fried are pitching right now. I mean, to me, that's a huge part of the story right now in Atlanta, is getting so much quality at the top of the rotation from those two guys in particular.
Yeah, this is a really good team. I mean, you see they put Sean Murphy back in the lineup. Austin Riley had been dinged up. He gets back in the lineup the day that they don't have Acuna in the lineup. And you're like, that's still a pretty good lineup. And even Acuna hadn't been hitting like the star version of himself, and they are humming right along. I can't imagine that, having the fourth most wins in the National League should be a reason to sell. So I think they'll be fine. I do. Sale is like, on top of his game. You can see it in the strikeouts minus walks. He's back to where he was. A little bit of in my rankings, I had him fifth. A little bit of the Tyler Glasnow issue where you're like, yeah, it looks great right now. But the one question we had going into the season was a little bit less production, but a little bit more quantity of production. And so you're just hoping he stays healthy. I mean, I suppose one more injury to either Fried or Sale could set Anthopoulos on the selling, timeline. But I just don't think it. I mean, he's a guy that buys all the time. Like he wants to win every chance he gets. I don't see him selling. In terms of Acuna, one last bit that I think is interesting is, dynasty rank and just a real early idea of where he is next year. Just when you pointed out 2022, 15 homers, 29 stolen bases, I think that is the risk that he comes back and does that, especially since, he was kind of in the middle of that kind of a year this year. So I don't think he's a first rounder.
He won't be a first rounder thinking about first pitch Arizona, right?
Yeah, I definitely won't.
There's some drafts then. That's it's going to run from Halloween. That starts on October 31st, runs through that entire weekend. Keep an eye out. Baseball HQ, by the way, if you want to join us, really fun conference to go to every year. In those drafts, it'll be too early to know for sure. I think there could be a world in which Acuna gets through the rehab, goes into spring training, actually could play some games in spring training, and then
inflate.
If he's looking like himself, driving the ball, stealing bases in the spring coming off the second surgery, then I think he could creep into the back part of round 1 and be a top 15 player going into next season. But I agree with you. I think at least for the time being, he'd be on the outside looking in at that group, because this was one of those years we just looked at it. There were 20 players that were probably first round picks by talent, and it hasn't worked out that way. Acuña is not the only early first round pick who just by performance has underwhelmed to this
Corbin
point.
Carroll.
Corbin Carroll. So peeking behind the curtain for a second, I didn't put this in the rundown. I got a trade offer in mixed labor, 15-team league. This came in late Saturday night, I think. I was offered Corbin Carroll, and the ask in return was for me to give up Royce Lewis and Tommy Pham. And I opened the email at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I looked at it and I was like, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I thought, this is a great idea. I should snap accept this. But you should never snap accept a trade at 2 in the morning.
No, you shouldn't.
Never, ever. So I put the phone back down. I woke up. I looked at it later in the day. And I said, there's no way I'm going to do this. And I pulled up the calendar year leaderboard. And I pulled up the season leaderboards just to remind myself, I have Corbin Carroll in 0 leagues. When you don't have a player, you can know they're underperforming, but you don't really feel it quite the same way as when you have them. Corbin Carroll's season, since we last talked about him, has not gotten any better. It's unbelievable so far. He's at 188, 274, 284, 2 homers, 9 steals in 51 games. I mean, that's an all-time colossal bust start for someone who was in the top 5 of pretty much every single draft. And I wouldn't give up a guy that's had multiple ACL tears and Tommy Pham, a late free agent signing, to get him, because I'm convinced Corbin Carroll's broken. I should have maybe seen more of the warning signs or taken those more into account. I mean, I guess I didn't ignore them completely. I don't have them anywhere. But at the same time, I wasn't telling people to stay away, right? If I was really concerned, everybody here would have heard about it. I thought because he kept playing last year, that was a pretty good sign that Corbin Carroll was healthy. And something just is not right. The K rate hasn't jumped. The batting average on balls in play is down 100 points, basically, from where it's been his first season plus in the league. But like, how do you explain it? It just doesn't. Nothing about it makes any sense to me.
I don't know if I'm as convinced as you are that he was broken. I mean, the one thing is, we were worried in 2022 about the raw power, the barrel rate, not lining up with the slugging percentage in a small sample. So we were worried that he wasn't going to have like a 200 ISO. And there's other people who've had that worry that, some of this is the legs and, it's not 70 raw power. We've still got Fangraphs scout ratings on it. It's 50-55 raw power. That feels about right. Obviously that's not what he's doing now. 50 to 55 raw power is what he's projected to do from here on out. So another sort of 13 to 14 homers the rest of the way. And so I still think that's in him. And what we've seen since 2022 is more raw power. I mean, better max EVs. And then last year, a little bit better barrel rate. So the speed is still there. The patience is still there. The strikeout rate is still good. The ground ball rate is not through the roof. And we have him publicly saying that it's a swing shape issue. I don't know. I might have taken the deal.
I don't know. I'll probably regret not taking it if everything ends up being fine, but there's just something that doesn't line up for me. And not a trade I would have expected to turn down.
What was the part other than Pham?
Royce Lewis. I mean, I'm convinced Royce Lewis on a per plate appearance basis has first round skills. He's just had 0 health next to it. So it's a leap of faith that he's going to keep doing it day after day and actually stay healthy enough, right?
Yeah.
But every category, maybe a little light in speed, power's a harder thing to find than bags right now. That was a lot of my thinking was, I think Royce Lewis is healthier than Corbin Carroll right now, even though Royce Lewis has been on the high health for the last several weeks.
I don't, yeah. The thing with the bat speed numbers that makes me not want to use them as much, and I haven't been using them that much, is that we don't have last year even.
Right.
You don't even have so, he looks fine in the bat speed numbers, and that makes me think that he's not hurt. But what if he was swinging it a lot faster last year? I don't know.
It's so weird to me. Like, he's getting more fastballs this year. Corbin Carroll's getting more fastballs, and he's not really hitting anything. But last year he hit 296 with a 521 slug against fastballs. This year he's hitting 183 with a 287 slug against fastballs. He hit breaking stuff fine last year. 295 average, 528 slug. This year, 180 and 260. But what's weird is that the swing and miss is not up on those pitch types. That's the really strange part about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the swing shape, maybe that is the.
I mean, the ground ball rate is up, but it's not like, spiking like Ronald Acuña even. He's not up at 50%.
Right, and he didn't get pull happy, or there's just so little in the underlying numbers that explains why it's not working right now.
I don't know why Rob Arthur hasn't done a drag update. I might have to prod him. Like, I would like to know how the ball compares to the past. We did have a kind of unseasonably cold April, but we are past that now. And there do seem to be a fair amount of people where you look at their lines and most of the stuff is in the same place except for the slugging.
Right.
And we know that from the overall game environment, we know from the league home run rate that, something's a little bit different this year.
Sure is. But Corbin Carroll's struggles are a mystery to me.
What if he just had he never had no doubt power. So what if he was kind of a just enough guy and, taking just a couple feet off of his batted ball distance is part of this story? I don't know.
I like the hypothesis just as an explanation, but it's not satisfactory. It's not enough.
It is pretty legendary. I don't think I have too many shares, but I had him, I think like 6th or so in my rankings. It's just never ended up picking there.
Yeah.
I did consider an early buy low that I might still consider, which was like a Junior Caminero plus something for him in a 20-team dynasty.
Interesting. Not sure where I fall on that one. I had to think about that one for a day or two before I know for sure. But it wasn't a snap thing you did before. At least it was offered to you and you turned it down?
No, it was a thing I bandied about with my co-owner.
You didn't put it out there. Okay.
And we just didn't have the energy. Like, we just didn't have the energy. We were like, yeah, that sounds like maybe a good idea. You have these like battles between your brain and your heart, right? Your brain's yeah, this is a good idea. Go buy him low. Go buy him low. Dude, look at the projections. He's great. Go buy him low. He steals more bases than Caminero. Come on, go. And your heart's like, I'm just gonna do something else now.
Well, speaking of the battle between the brain and the heart, Victor Robles, DFA'd by the Nationals. I mean, like, what went wrong here? Where did I go wrong? Did I go wrong because of 2019 and the super happy fun ball, making it look like Robles had game power they didn't have? Is that why I got tricked? Because
I think it tricked him too, because you saw a big increase in strikeout rate that year, and he kind of wrestled with, am I a power hitter that can strike out that much, or do I need to, in 2023 he tried I'm going to just put this ball on the ground and not pull it and let the ball travel and see if I can be, a speedster. Neither way really worked for him, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, there was a point, people might remember, back when they were both in the fall league together, Acuña and Robles were the headline prospects. And I think most people you asked had a clear preference for Acuña, but the question at the time wasn't absurd. So my questions for you: am I vindicated if a smart team takes the flyer on Robles now that he's available, or do we have to get performance that mirrors 2019 again, like double-digit homers, 20 plus steals in a season with great defense? Do I have to get results or do I have to get process to be vindicated here?
I don't know. I think a smart team might pick him up just to be a defensive backup. So,
right. You could treat him like he could be another Michael Taylor. It's for baseball, like real baseball roster construction purposes. And the other part about this, he's had some injuries. Like it's a big part of the story. 36 games played last year, 107 back in 2021, only 14 so far this year. We talked about, Seager, the metric that Robert Orr put together. It's a swing decision metric. It likes Victor Robles, or at least it liked what he was doing in the brief time he played in 2023. I think that's sort of reflected in some lower K rates that he's run. So there's a world in which he goes somewhere and has a back half of a career that's at least respectable. Could it be on a ceiling side? Could this be like the path Jerkson Profar has taken to be the player that he is, right? A lot of injuries earlier in his career, got to the big leagues young with the Rangers, missed a bunch of time, bounced around a little bit, but ended up putting together at least a few good seasons. That's having a great one to begin 2024. Like, is that the best case outcome? A little less swing and miss in Profar's profile, so probably just a better hit tool off the cuff. But I think that's sort of like the highest hope one could reasonably have for Robles at this point.
Yeah, I got 0 shares of Profar because I never really bought into that batted ball profile. And it's interesting you mention that because I was looking over at Michael Taylor and I was like, Michael Taylor has hit the ball consistently 5 miles an hour harder on the max side than Victor Robles. And his barrel rates, his worst barrel rate is like Victor Robles' best barrel rate. So I don't think that's a great comp. But Profar is a guy who hasn't hit the ball 110 since 2018. Hasn't had a barrel rate above 6% since 2018. Above 6% in his whole career. He just did it once in the Happy Fun Ball year. And he still managed to eke a career out. So that's why I think Robles needs to kind of maybe embrace who he was last year more than what he's been trying to be this year. If you look at his pull rate, it's 67%. Last year it was 37%. Like, he's very obviously trying to hit for power again. And I think if he goes back to 2023 when he let the ball travel, that's Profar. 14% strikeout rate, 106 max EV, 2% barrel. It's like not even as good as Profar. But that I could see something going in that direction. I think he might be more beneficial for him to go to a bad team.
I'm torn on that. I'm wondering if being around better players, possibly better coaches, would actually get his approach to be more aligned with his tools, or if someone else could unlock something else. Because we look at the Nationals and we ask a lot of questions about their player development. At least we have historically. It might be better now than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but I've never really wanted to give them credit for developing Bryce Harper and Juan Soto. Like, they were just sort of who they were out of the box for the most part. Maybe that's unfair to someone in the system, but I think a fresh start could be the thing that at least makes him deeply relevant again, depending on the playing time. You're right. If it's a good team, it's probably more of a small side platoon role, backup outfielder situation. And we're not really talking about him unless he ends up on a playoff team and is the guy that goes off in October. It'd be amazing, as long as it's not against the team that I'm rooting for.
He's part of the reason why I care so much about batted ball outcomes in terms of process, like barrels and stuff like that. Because I think right now, the way that I explain it to my kids, because my kids ask me, is this guy good? And I have two ways of answering was, oh, he strikes out too much, but he hits the ball hard, or oh, he's good. He doesn't strike out too much and he hits the ball hard. That's how I sort everybody to the kids, where I'm just trying to make it easy for them to understand. And, at one point they asked me, because I took them all to the game, took the little leaguers to the A's game on Sunday, and they had a really great time. And I think at some point, Felix asked me, why do you always like mention whether they hit the ball hard or not? I was like, I think the way that modern baseball is now is that you can fill every position on the field with someone who hits the ball hard.
It's almost like the pitching staff. You can just about fill every pitching staff with someone who throws hard. It's not up and down with starters, but with relievers, If you want
Yeah.
to, you could have all guys that throw hard.
Yeah, who was it that was? And they had a question and answer with Eric Miller the week before. Eric Miller is the hard throwing lefty in the Giants pen, and he they said something about throwing hard, and he's like, "Yeah, like you kind of just have to now." Like that's how I feel about hitting the ball hard. You just kind of have to now. Like everyone can do it. It's sort of expected of you. You have to be Luis frigging Arias to not hit the ball hard. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think Victor Robles is Luis Arias. If I miss on a couple Luis Ariases, like, first of all, there's only been one. I mean, I guess you could say Quan is one. Lee is close. But if I miss on a couple of those because I'm hyper fixated on barrels and batted ball stats, then I am going to I'm also going to miss some Victor Robleses. You know what I mean?
Right. I do think there was a player profile that existed in the not so distant past that worked like this. I think Whit Merrifield actually had similar skills.
And I mean, in the distant past, there was a lot. Yeah.
Right. But even just a few years ago, there were some players that didn't hit the ball hard that played just enough in terms of hit tool.
Made enough contact.
Did just enough skills wise there to offset it. And then, occasionally popped a homer. Could steal bases, and then the other key, of course, is playing great defense. If you play great defense, you get yourself a lot of slack in terms of the limitations of your bat. Like Stephen Kwan is a very good defensive left fielder. A lot of teams wouldn't accept that in left field, but if you have guys other positions that can offset it, or if that's the way you build your roster, then that keeps driving your playing time. So I do think players like this can make it, but there's a few other boxes they have to tick in order for it to work out.
Here are the bottom 20 in barrel rates under the age of 26. These are the guys that it'd be interesting to me to be like, okay, I'm gonna sell all 20 of these. Who am I gonna be wrong on? Right? I'm just gonna blanket sell these guys. Sal Frelick, Mason Wynn, Jacob Young, Trey Lipscomb, Brian Rocchio, Michael Ciani, Ezekiel Duran, might be a temporary placement there, Nolan Shanuel, Bryce Turang, Keibert Ruiz, Oswaldo Cabrera, Johan Rojas, Leody Taveras, Luis Campusano, Gabriel Moreno, Spencer Torkelson, Andres Jimenez, Elu Harris Montero, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Anthony Volpe. Like, if you gave me, 3 or 4 exceptions that I could pull guys out of this list, I would blanket sell. You know what I mean? Like if I could just pull out maybe the catchers, like the catchers that make a lot of contact, especially if you put like strikeout rate next to this, I'd pull out 3 or 4 of this and I'd sell the rest.
Yeah, I think that's generally the approach a lot of people would want to take, at least people that listen to the show. I mean, some of those guys are premium defenders up the middle. That's where the exceptions usually come from. Volpe and Turang. Turang's
later
a shortstop playing second base. Volpe's a legit shortstop.
Later, I have a leaderboard where I put defense on, and the defense is something that we don't cite a lot, and it's something that you do have to think about it because it keeps them on the field. And the deeper your league is, the more you're excited that someone is just going to play all the time. And if they then also have a good strikeout rate, then they may give you some hits and luck. They're not luck, it's not the right word, but hit 10 to 15 homers just by squaring up a few.
Right. And I think that's more or less what happened when 2019 occurred for Victor Robles. It was also a live ball, so that made the ceiling seem a little higher than it was. Since we're on the Nationals, they've had a few pretty interesting things happening this year. At first, I thought Kyle Finnegan's season in their bullpen was the most unusual and interesting thing happening. It's not that. I submit this as the weirdest stat of the season so far. Jesse Winker has 7 stolen bases in 2024. He was 3 for 6 in his entire career entering the season. And for me, this is like, yeah, it's easy to steal bases, but Jesse Winker might finally be healthy again after a couple of really injury-ravaged seasons between Seattle and Milwaukee.
Yeah, but this is also what I was talking about earlier when I said that, stealing bases is half ability and half vibes. Like,
just free.
the Nationals were super aggressive in spring training, and they've got CJ Abrams with 8, Winker with 7, Joey Meneses with 2, Luis Garcia with 8, which is, I think, already his career high. Eddie Rosario, the old man, with 8. Jacob Young has 16. it's LaVictor Lipscomb here. That's interesting. I thought it was Trey.
It's true. He goes by Trey.
Yeah. Trey has 10 in 122 plate appearances. And Lane Thomas, our man, 11. I mean, they are just stealing left and right. And I think that's as much of anything. Yes, he's probably healthier than he's been in a while, but it's also team vibes through the roof. I mean, I could give you one piece of evidence he's not as healthy as he's ever been, which is he's only hit the ball 107, and then his best he hit it 114.
Yeah. Well, that could be the long-term damage to the back, right? It feels okay, but it's not as strong as it used to be, or you've lost something along the way. Like
Nietzsche was wrong. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you weaker.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we had a joyous retirement, I would say. I don't know if it was joyous for the man who's no longer a major league umpire, but Ángel Hernández has announced his retirement. He's reached a retirement settlement with Major League Baseball, effective immediately.
That's kind of amazing. That's the weirdest part of it all. And then he had to, like, his lawyer had to be like, he wasn't like, forced out. It's like, well, they took a settlement in the middle of the year. Like, this is not like September 28th when he's like, hey, see you guys. I'm going to go to my boat now.
I also don't know why it matters. Like, he's clearly retired now. It's not like there's some other place he's going to go be an umpire where saying, I wasn't fired, I left on my own. Like, that's not going to matter. I wondered, is this going to make people happy?
Maybe he'll show up in the Mexican leagues.
No, this is real retirement.
This is something I wonder. I wonder if they love what they do on the same level, because you will see, like, I think Bartolo Colon is probably pitching somewhere.
I think at this point, Ángel Hernández just needs to be a retired human. Like, he needs to play golf and go on a boat and just do whatever brings him joy. He's received so much scorn and so much hatred.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He should go somewhere where people like him.
Yeah. And
maybe don't know much about baseball.
But and I think there's also the umpire who frustrates us and frustrates players and managers and everybody around the game. But there's also the person. And I think there's a good profile that Sam Blum and Cody Stavenhagen just wrote last week about Ángel Hernández. Definitely check that out on The Athletic. But it made me wonder, is there some other umpire who's going to ascend to this level? Is someone else going to receive?
If you already, bring out CB Buckner, which is
that the angry mob just going to the next umpire to be mad? I don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
I got to the point, like, Ángel Hernández as an umpire, you never knew when he was going to get thin-skinned about something. Mm-hmm. You never knew when the calls were going to go from below average to
maybe it's understandable
egregious.
Given the amount of racism that he dealt with in his life. Like, maybe he's just like, no, man, I'm not gonna handle this here.
It's really hard to know. Like, it's one of those situations like, well, I didn't walk in those shoes. I don't know what that was like. I don't want that job. Never would have wanted that.
The whole job of being an umpire is not to be thin-skinned. Really, it doesn't seem that way. Like, it seems to be, the turtle of the bunch. You don't want to have the big old, thing on your back and not take it.
It's a tough line to walk. We've talked about it before, where the temperament needs to be not to escalate situations. And unfortunately, umpires escalate situations sometimes. It goes beyond Ángel Hernández. We talked about it. I think it was maybe a couple of weeks ago. Pat Murphy got tossed from a game, and I thought I forget which umpire it even was in that instance. The umpire in that instance escalated, kind of walked at him, leaned into him, right? And it's a hard job. I think there are times when players and managers say ridiculous stuff, fans say ridiculous stuff. And you're human. I'm sure it gets under your skin.
The lived experience of it is just like, oh, I'm being attacked all the time.
Right. That's got to be exhausting. So I hope he finds something that brings him joy and calm and no criticism. If he's like a chair ump for tennis at the retirement facility or something someday, it's like, please don't do that to yourself. Just play tennis. Just enjoy the other side.
Yell at the umpire.
But I did wonder, I'm like, is someone else going to ascend to that level now? I hope not. I hope we just chill a little bit. It'd be nice. Some injury updates to pass along, just in passing. We got Cristian Javier going on the IL now with a forearm strain. The Astros are just hanging on. And I think that's one of the areas where the roster's vulnerable. They just don't have that quality starting pitching depth right now, the way they're built. We're going to talk about Justin Verlander in a bit. He was one of the big fallers in your rankings. We've had questions about Framber and his effectiveness. Hunter Brown has struggled. Spencer Arrighetti's trying to find his way.
Urquidy left his rehab start.
Yeah, Urquidy didn't get through the rehab outing.
So maybe we were talking about, is Arrighetti or Brown gonna go down after everyone's healthy, and now it doesn't matter. They're both in.
Both in, unless they want to throw Eric Lauer into one of those spots. He seems to be the organizational depth option that's waiting for a chance.
Because JP France is hurt. What is Eric Lauer doing in the minor leagues? He has had one start that went 2 innings. So I don't know if he's ready yet. So yeah, this is quickly becoming a problem, and they haven't had their sort of pop up. Hey, look, we discovered another guy that we signed for $5,000. And it hasn't happened a little bit. I do think Hunter Brown can turn it around, and I think Arrighetti is kind of a replacement-y. So that means there'll be some better days in front of him, because he's pitched to a 7 ERA basically so far. Sierra's 4.17. Like that's what I kind of believe in him. But this is bad news for the Astros, who were kind of getting going on the hitting side. And we're winning some games. I wonder if it just doesn't happen for them this year. Right now they are 24-30. This would be the time when you would have to, you want to be sort of even the Nationals that year where they were bad to begin with. Like I'm sure they were close to 500 by the All-Star break. So this is the time for the Astros to get to that 500. And if they don't have any pitchers, they're going to have to do a lot of slugging.
Yeah. Window is now for Houston to start making up more of that ground as they try and find their way back into the playoff picture. Other injury notes to pass along. Jorge Polanco placed on the IL with a hamstring strain. I've been surprised. It just hasn't gone well for him in year 1 in Seattle.
I think I'm selling on bats that arrived to Seattle, at least at the beginning of the year. Luke Raley's kind of figured it out and turned it around. But I just feel like we have a long track record of, especially people, I mean, he bats from both sides, but especially righties, landing in Seattle and not being able to handle hitting there.
I thought Mitch Garver was a nice ad as a DH. That's not working so far either, right? Strikeouts are up.
Another right-hander, and the strikeouts are up, and you have Teoscar's comments. We've covered this extensively here, but I wanted to turn it into something actionable, which I do think is maybe avoid right-handers in their first year in Seattle. I mean, I haven't run the numbers to say it as a blanket thing, but we do know that it increases strikeouts for right-handers, and we have 2 players right here that are struggling from increased strikeouts. And Polanco can't really afford to be. I don't think he has the power to be a 30% strikeout rate guy, even if he kind of accesses old power rates. He's kind of a drop in a lot of places. I've been really trying to shop him hard before the season in Devil's Rejects, and now I feel like he might be the guy that I just have to hold on to for better days. Maybe in a different team.
Yeah, you're just hoping he can get back to his pre-24 contact quality, right? Double barrel rates 3 consecutive seasons. I thought this was good oatmeal going into the year, but your broader point about hitters going into Seattle, the difficulties of hitting there, which we've talked a lot about on a recent Friday episode, it seems very real. So could be a group of players to be a lot more careful with in the future. You can't have the contact quality dip that much and then bump the K rate up north of 30%. Those have been the problems for Jorge Polanco so far. Interestingly, the infield for the Mariners, Dylan Moore has been playing a lot lately. He's a bigger part of their plan than I expected. He's always had interesting tools, that power speed combo. I kind of like what we're seeing right now. I mean, the K rate's down under 23%. He walks. Like, is there anything here to
it just took him 6
about?
years of hitting in Seattle to finally figure it out. I mean, he's always been cool because the power and speed is pretty legit, and he's kind of a cool athlete that can play all over the field. So I've always, kind of thought of him as more interesting than his number of plate appearances suggested,
Right. What would happen if he was not a small side platoon player? That was a good question to ask for a while, and he's hitting the ball in the air more than ever. He was always a consistent fly ball hitter. He is hitting it in the air a lot, and he's hitting it hard frequently too.
And he's pulling it. And I wonder, one thing that you can't know because we don't have alternate universes is I wonder just, especially in like 2021 when he had a lot of things going for him. And then, 2022, like what if he'd just been given a job and been able to righty lefty be in the lineup every day? We just don't know what that looks like from him.
Right. Yeah. The whole timeline could be a little bit different. So definitely interested in Dylan Moore where available, because it looks like that playing time path is even wider while Polanco's down. It was already opened up enough even when Polanco was healthy.
Last little bit in like weekly lineup settings. One thing that I've been thinking about recently is just like when you have that little red, have that little health icon next to a player, and then you click on it and it says, "Oh, you just missed a game." Manager says you'll be fine. It's like I've O'Neill's knee, Tyler O'Neill's knee. Lars Nootbaar had something like this, where it's like a hamstring, I think. I've been saying to myself, I have to treat that person as if he's injured for the week. So when I'm planning for this week, I need to have, especially in like weekly lineup situations, I need to have someone that can play for that person. I can, and if it's like, or if it's like a draft and hold and I have to set him, even if it says he should be back on Monday, I'm like, nope. Yeah. I'd rather not miss 3 games because you can, in a lot of these draft and holds, you can switch on Friday, right? I'd rather not miss those 3 games. I'd rather, maybe he does come back Monday, but if I have a healthy option that I know gets 3 games, I'd take the bird in the hand is what I'm saying. So I've been trying to be a little bit more cautious because I think teams are being more cautious, and they say, oh no, he's ready today, but he'll play tomorrow, and then you just lost 1 of your 3 games, and you had an option that's going to play all 3. So I've been kind of treating them as injured until they prove they're not. In another way.
Well, it's easy enough to get them back in a few days later, right? If you use a slightly less talented player for a few days, it's not going to sink you. You're more likely to lose that playing time sticking with the banged up day-to-day player, because I think you're right. I think a lot of teams are being more careful when players are banged up. I mean, Nico Horner, Austin Riley,
didn't go on the IL and was out for like 11 days.
Very odd, very frustrating situation.
Cost me in a couple places. I was pretty mad about that.
Yeah, not thrilled about that. Quick update on Kodai Senga. He may be out until the All-Star break. That is according to Will Salmon of The Athletic. Had a couple of setbacks.
The news can be even worse. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like this is not headed to a good place. Every time he started throwing, he's like, nope, stopping.
Yeah, kind of makes you wonder if he comes back this year at all. But if you were thinking about stashing him, it's not time to do that. Wait until there's a little bit of progress. Wait until a rehab assignment starts, because it's probably going to be a long rehab assignment for Senga if he gets up to that point this summer.
Yeah.
Some news on Roki Sasaki. He is planning on posting this winter, it sounds like. Chelsea James of the Washington Post had a report. It's kind of confirming things that people have been reporting and suggesting all along.
He made a big ruckus last year about wanting to be in post last year, which I thought it wasn't going to happen for a variety of reasons. But when you make a ruckus like that, I think it's, the way that there's like this subtle thing that happens in Japan, which is you can put a little bit of pressure on your team in the media by saying stuff like this.
Yeah.
So he was just trying to ratchet up whatever leverage he had, which is, I'm going to continue talking about wanting to be posted until you post me, basically. And the team at some point is like, fine, we'll take the money.
if you're in a situation where you've got an open player pool, I think he's talented enough where you'd want to try in a keeper or dynasty league, get him on your roster like at the next possible opportunity. I think a lot of leagues don't let you do that if you didn't do it already, and leagues where you could get him, it's probably already gone.
Yeah,
so
it's hard to make this one actionable, but it does. If you're selling, the other team knows this now too, so there's not a real way to leverage this, but it does make him more interesting as a pitching prospect, because when you hold Japanese pitching prospects, a lot of times it's like, well, when's he coming over?
Yep.
In this case, you can be like, now, so it makes him a lot more attractive to get in a trade, and B, maybe a lot more attractive to trade if you really need something for this year. But he's fun because he throws super, super hard. And he has a good splitter. It could be a little bit like a Kodai Senga, sitting 97.
Right. And a little bit younger, so even more projectability too. It's going to
I don't think he's as polished as Yamamoto though. And he doesn't have as wide of an arsenal. And so it's not, I think that we'll probably enter some sort of hype mill where he'll be washed through the same process, and, people will declare him the best pitching prospect in baseball. But I don't know. I might have him. Job is my best pitching prospect in baseball, and then probably Cade Horton, and then maybe Roki Sasaki So he's second or third. I'm saying he's not first. Woof. Hot take.
Is it? I mean, it could be.
Around these parts, I guess it's a hot take.
Yeah. Let's talk about a few movers in your starting pitcher rankings update. That went up at the end of last week. Got some movement even inside the top 25. Mentioned Chris Sale earlier in the show being at number 5. That was a bit of a surprise for me, not because he hasn't deserved it, but I think it's the way you described it. It is like the Tyler Glass now of, hey, this is working really, really well right now, and when it's all working, this is where he goes. We know the downside is if he breaks, and he's broken often in recent seasons, that it all falls apart very quickly. He's
throwing really close to his max, but
yeah.
Never mind the torpedoes.
It's age 35 season too, which makes me wonder, with this window out of 21, 22, and even 23, which is more like a half season. The other 2 seasons were a lot less. Is he going to age? Is Chris Sale going to turn into a Verlander, a Scherzer type, where we get this 35 to 39, these next 5 seasons where he's consistently exceeding our expectations?
I would wager no, because he did not have the health outcomes, in the early 30s that those guys had. Those guys were largely healthy until they started breaking. So if you got somebody who's already started breaking.
Yeah, Verlander had the 1D tour for the core muscle repair surgery. That was a little bit.
Yeah, but was he like 29 or something?
Yeah, it was closer to the time that Sale was broken. But yeah, it's
okay.
But he's been remarkably durable until.
And even during that time, he pitched through it. It just wasn't as good.
Right. Yeah, he just didn't get the same results that we were accustomed to. But I saw Paul Skeens landed at 15. There had to be some temptation to move him even higher. Right? I mean,
it was after that great start. I'm glad that I had, a little bit of reticence there, because, he comes out in the Giants start and he's great again, but only 3 strikeouts. So I do think there's going to be something to watch in terms of, is he more of a sinkerish guy that isn't going to have the high end strikeout totals? But he looks really excellent. I also couldn't quite give him the same amount of innings as a lot of the other people in those rankings of that spot. I do think he's headed for another. I think he has about 130 innings in him for the year, and he's already at 43. So I think he only has 80, 85 innings left. That's not a full workload.
There's nobody ranked ahead of him that you'd look at and say he only has 85 innings left. Everybody else can just go.
That's why he's. Yeah. I mean, he's right behind Logan Webb, who's super boring in some ways. I mean, has the worst K-BB in my top 20. But it has a great projected ERA because of the home park. One of the worst projected strikeout rates in the top 20, but also doesn't have only 80 innings left.
Yeah, Garrett Crochet cracked the top 25. Same kind of problem where you wonder, like, how long do the White Sox let him go? They, as a rebuilding team, of course, have the luxury of shutting him down completely on these are the workload terms. There's no tightroping it, trying to find a playoff spot along the way. So I just wonder, like, what do you think their North Star is for his workload? When do we see Garrett Crochet call it a season?
I've got 111 innings. I don't know.
That's your number?
That was my number.
It's got like 50 innings left. That's only 8 to 10 starts.
Yeah, it's real tough. I mean, maybe they just want to. They've got 2 years of him left. If he breaks, like a lot of times, I think these things don't show up in the same year. So it's like they could probably let him pitch like 160 innings, and it's not like he would just be like, oh, now I need Tommy John. You know what I mean? It's more like, well, you pushed him hard last year, so now he needs Tommy John in his second to last year. It seems like Garrett Crochet is going to be traded off the White Sox, right? I mean, like, do you think the White Sox are going to be good in the next 2 years? That's all they have him for.
I don't think they're going to be good in the next 2 years. I think he'd be their most interesting player to trade in the moment with Luis Robert hurt. And even if Robert were healthy, I think maybe Crochet brings back more. I mean, there's a lot of interesting possibilities here. What's surprising to me is he's averaging the same kind of velo on his fastball as a starter. Like he's up,
which I don't think lasts, because if you look at Jordan Hicks, when I don't tell me again. I know he was sick, but other than the one where he was sick, he still started the year 98.6, 97.5, 96.7, 97.2, 96.6, 96, 95, 95.8. The one he was sick was 93. I got it. 95.6. So it's still going down. You know, he still can't sit 97 as a starter. That's the craziest thing I think about Paul Skeens is just how long can he do this? Even Jared Jones's velo has gone down over time from off of his debut. So I don't know. That's the Crochet thing is super interesting. I don't really have an answer for you because they may want to massage his innings in order to trade him this year, in order to give the team that's acquiring him more innings this year. But if you're buying him, would you buy him this year? No, I think he's going to get sold next year because they're going to try and get him to some point, and maybe in the off season or during next season, they can say he's a full-time starter now. He pitched 125 innings or 120 innings last year, 111 innings. He is right.
Yeah, but if you're a team that's interested in trading for Garrett Crochet, don't you want to be the ones to control what the rest of his 2024 looks like?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Don't you want to be the team that gives him instructions for the offseason and a plan instead of letting some other organization do it?
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't want to depend on the White Sox.
I mean, he's great so far this season. 33.9% K rate, control, better than we've ever seen from him in the big leagues. I didn't think this was going to work when they first announced it. I kind of laughed it off. I should have been more open-minded. Clearly, this was
he ended up being the best of the converted starters, and all of them have been pretty good except for Puck.
Yeah, and Puck deked us with the fantastic spring. That's the best part about it.
Yeah.
So it looks like your trust is returning with Carlos Rodon. Big jump for him. He was up at 26 on the update. I think he was outside the top 50 on the last set of rankings.
The stuff I should have believed the stuff ratings. The stuff ratings have been good all year. What hasn't been good is the K-BB. So if you remember, he started out, he wasn't striking guys out. And the stuff ratings were good, but he wasn't striking guys out. And I should have said, okay, good stuff ratings, good track record, good health. I'm going to ignore the K-BB because stuff beats K-BB in these small samples. And instead, I kind of ogled the strikeout rate too much and put him down too low. So this is actually kind of a return to where he was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, kind of interesting to me. His swinging strike rate hasn't gone all the way back to where it was in 21 with the White Sox or in 22 with the Giants. So maybe the K rate comes in closer where the projections are. I think projections are 25, 26%. He's been at 22% so far this year. So if you're expecting pre-23 Rodon, you might be a little disappointed, but I think you're pretty happy overall with what you got based on the draft day price.
The stuff days projections say 26.9%. So there's still something there. And for what it's worth, his stuff has been going in the right direction. I have him as a stuff riser.
How about Ranger Suarez up at 28?
It's like 2 behind him. Yeah. I don't know, man. We've got a 4.06 ERA projected for him. I pushed him basically as hard as I could with that projection before. I was like, I'm not putting him ahead of, like Logan Webb has a 3.3 projection. I'm like not putting Ranger Suarez anywhere near that. I had a hard time putting him against, ahead of Joe Ryan with his amazing K-BB. And even Cole Reagans has great stuff plus and a similar projection. So I put him and Jack Flaherty right by Rodon and just said, hey, this is where I'm going to put guys that my model doesn't like, but they're pitching really well and the K-BB is there. And, sometimes people just pop, I don't know. Where would you think like this? So this is 27 and 28. Like, is that just, I know there's some people out there like Ranger Suarez is a top 5 pitcher in the big leagues this year. And I'm just like,
that's what happened. It doesn't mean it's going to keep happening. I know that's a hard thing. It's difficult tension to break, but I think you have him. I mean, if I had a set of pitching rankings, it'd be pretty close because he's usually in, and we've seen similar flashes like this from him before. I think his 2021 season when he was in the pen and then he was a starter at the end of the year, put up the ridiculous 1.36 ERA, even 1 whip. He had good skills that year, right? 25% K rate, good swinging strike rate, decent control. This is the best control we've ever seen from him. A few more Ks. It doesn't seem completely out of bounds. No projection system wants to buy it. And this is why the Lodem concept is such a big deal to me, and I'm such a doofus for not having any Ranger Suarez anymore. I had him only in auto new, included him in a big bundle trade to get Wyatt Langford. I gave up a lot of sell highs in that trade, so we'll see what the next couple of months bring. Baseball Pods either fleeced me and is going to win the league because of the trade, or
you'll win next year with Wyatt Langford.
And I'll win. Yeah, that's the hope. I don't know. That team's pretty messed up. But is Ranger Suarez similar to, better than, or worse than Justin Steele? And why? Because in my mind, they're very similar. I think Suarez might have a little more depth to his arsenal.
That's it. I think that's important. Plus, in terms of K-BB, if you're talking about this year, the strikeout minus walk rate for Steele is worse, and pretty close to league average. And even though it looks like he has a better than average stuff plus, he's a stuff plus dropper in Steele. And then there's the fact that it's a 2-pitch arsenal, and it's a 2-pitch arsenal that worked, for a little bit, but also isn't Strider-esque and is now forced to go through the league another time after they've seen him. He's not really surprising anybody anymore in terms of the shapes of his pitches and what he looks like. So with Suarez, he can emphasize a different pitch in any given game.
Yeah, more ways to pivot. I mean, I think I would prefer Suarez to Steele, but whatever my comfort level is with Steele, which is growing because he's finding a way to get it done. I just watched it yesterday. He did to the Brewers again. The Brewers see him all the time, and they really don't hit him.
You have some recency bias, dude. Like, look back a start before that.
There was second start off the IL?
I don't know. I mean, he had 3 starts in a row off the IL. 6 runs earned, 4 runs earned, 5 runs earned.
Yeah, Pirates got him a couple times in there too. One of those was against Atlanta. But yeah, it's a constant source of frustration. Justin Steele, I just can't quite figure it out with him either. We'll get to the fallers later in the week because I think some of them merit more than a minute or two as a flyby. So we'll save that for probably our Thursday episode. Let's quickly look at where the money went this weekend. It was Jake Meyers week in leagues where he was still available. A lot of 12-team leagues where Jake Meyers was the most expensive player available. And you put together a group of metrics to look at some of the most well-rounded players in the game right now, I mean,
and
Jake Meyers is there.
I wanted to put together, strikeout less than average, barrel above average, base running above average, defense above average. I did not sort by WRC plus. I just wanted to leave that in there for those of you looking on YouTube. And I just thought this would be an interesting idea because especially the deeper leagues, we're always trying to be like, who's going to keep their playing time? And we should have maybe known last year. I liked Chas McCormick, and I thought, Dusty Baker, should play him more. But Dusty Baker knows more about baseball than I do. I'm just going to throw that out there. And Dusty Baker was, I think, kind of fixated on Chas McCormick's defense. And I think, it turns out probably that Jake Meyers is a better center field defender than Chas McCormick. So what you're having now is Chas McCormick is a corner outfielder. Jake Meyers is the center fielder. And so this is a moment where defense is like, hey, dude, you should have seen this coming. He was going to keep the job. He was going to stay in the job. He was going to play a lot because of his defense. And on this group, you can see everybody is a regular. And even when Lars Nootbaar is struggling, he's on this list, and his defense on sometimes is going to keep him in the lineup. You've got also Luis Garcia Jr. in here. And part of the reason why he was given all the chances he's been given is that he's at least a capable defender that doesn't strike out a lot, And so if you're building a team, you say, all right, well, let's just put the guy who can actually glove it. He doesn't strike out too much, and let's see if he can grow. And he's been not given the opportunity to grow. The other people on this list are just mostly stars or high-end regulars. Bobby Witt Jr. is on this list. Willie Adames, Ketel Marte, Max Kepler, Carlos Correa. It's a really interesting list. I mean, it's within this year. So if you expanded it to be, multi-year, you would get most of the two-way stars in baseball. But it is, I think, cool that you make this list and you say, oh, Jake Meyers and Luis Garcia. If you make this list for next year, and you got to keep the plate appearance number low because you're looking for guys for next year. But if you do this at the end of the year and you sort for 200 plate appearances and you do all these sorts, I bet you'll find a couple guys that play next year because of their defense, like Jake Meyers.
Yeah, that's a good rubric to consider for looking for some future value, especially in deeper formats where just finding someone who exceeds on playing time ends up being good. But Meyers might be a notch above that. I think that's reflected in just how excited people were to add him in 12-team leagues this weekend.
I tried. We put some 30s out there. With my coworker, I forget what we put down. I think it was $30 or $40, and we should have put more down. Yeah, we just lost Xander Bogaerts. We should have. I don't know if we should have gone all the way to 100 or whatever, but we should have put more down.
Could end up being one of the better hitter pickups of the season. We'll have to see how it plays out for Jake Meyers. But I think we talked about it going into the weekend. Meyers can coexist with McCormick because they have that left field spot open. Yordan Alvarez can be the primary DH. It's fine. The pieces fit right now.
There's
for that to work.
A little bit of an issue with Jose Abreu back up. I think yesterday they played Abreu and Singleton.
That could be a problem sometimes, against righties. That would be the squeeze. But if either one of those guys isn't hitting enough, which is very possible, one of them sits instead. That's the
100%.
It's kind of a merit-based thing, I think, with that group of players kind of jockeying for time.
So Chas McCormick is playing for his job right now.
Yeah, he is. I got him a lot of places too. I need him to come through.
I'm trying to hold through this. I think this next couple of weeks is going to tell you almost everything.
How about Colt Keith? It was kind of the late draft season. Get a young player that's going to play and see what happens. Then he was a cut in early May, and now he's a re-add for a lot of people here in late May. Last 3 weeks have been a lot better. He's got the K rate down. He's doing everything as far as like a hitter OBP, like real life good offensive player profile. He's not getting to the power consistently yet. And I don't know if Colt Keith is ever going to be much of a base stealer. He's got 3 bags in 4 attempts. I mean, if he's not much of a base stealer in these rules, it means 10, 12 bags would be sort of the expectation. That's fine. It's not 0. I think this is just what it looks like now when players are adjusting to big league pitching. I think it's going to take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a half a season sometimes for guys to start putting the pieces together because it's just different. You see so much more quality pitching after you get out of the minor leagues, and how teams decide to be patient is ultimately going to be one of the things we have to learn. We have to figure out which teams are going to be the most patient and which teams are going to be quicker to take playing time away when things aren't working.
Yeah, if you look at his rolling stats, he's learned basically how to lift the ball a little bit over time. And that is something you'll see with guys who debut. You'll see, so one of the reasons that I liked Ellie this year was that, you'll see guys with like 40, 45% ground ball rates in the minors come to the majors and all of a sudden 55% ground ball rate in their rookie season. I think it's just something about the way pitchers in the major leagues can pitch you. I don't know, the stuff, whatever it is, sometimes ground ball rate spikes. And then you see with the aging curves, it just improves over time. And, that's what Keith has been doing, is figuring out how to lift it more over time, figuring out how to pull and lift it. And right now his pull and lift rolling charts are in a good spot. So, he's accessing the power a little bit more. And this is something that he dealt with in the minors. If you look, he's got some weird, really low power years. And then, the pull rate jumps, and he kind of learned to pull over the course of the minors. So basically he just did what he did in the minor leagues in the first, 6 weeks. He kind of went through the whole process. And sometimes I look at people's player pages and I feel like it's like the Matrix, and I can see, oh yeah, all the problems they had as kids are coming back. Like if Paul Goldschmidt just goes and suddenly is all oppo, like that'll be how he came into the league. Like I just see certain things, like you regress back to where you were at the beginning on the way out. And so we just saw Colt Keith work through all of the demons that he had in the minor leagues in the first 6 weeks. So I think, he might be ready to go. I didn't see him as available in any of my leagues.
Yeah, I said him at least in one of my leagues, and he was a priority ad. It's nice to have a middle corner bat too, just as your first bench option. Looks like the Tigers are going to stay patient with him. I thought Nick Gonzalez was kind of interesting as a pickup. His barrel rate's way up right now. He's chasing a lot of pitches outside the zone. It's only been 16 games up with the Pirates, but is there anything else different about him? I mean, his profile looks completely different, but did he change his swing? Did he go to driveline? Is there anything about Nick Gonzalez that makes him more interesting now?
What I don't get is that his swinging strike rate in AAA this year was about the same as the swinging strike rate in AAA in 2023. So 14.6 this year, 15.1 for Gonzalez. This year, the strikeout rate was 17.5%, and last year was 26.6%. So I tend to think it's a mirage. But one thing that I've noticed is the walk rates are big different. So I think he's just being aggressive, and instead of maybe watching strike three, it's a little bit more like, I'm going to take 3 A swings, and get to my power before you strike me out. I think that literally describes most of it. The fly ball rate is up, and his ground ball fly ball mix has been all over the place. And he is a guy who wanted to make a swing change. So maybe this is him finally being comfortable in that swing change. This is the most extended sort of high fly ball rate that we've seen from him in a while, since AA in 2022. So maybe it's coming together. I just tend to distrust somebody with a 14% swinging strike rate. I tried to sneak him by an Ottoneu to have a $1 shortstop, and he got sniped away from me for like $4. I wasn't really willing to go to $4 in Ottoneu. So if you can get him cheap, I like him. I don't know I want to spend a lot of money on.
Yeah, that's the right way. Like a cheap flyer, I think, is the right way to describe him, because you just want to see a little more. It's been so up and down. There's been a few injuries sprinkled in there as well. It's hard to know like where the true baseline is at. And as we've talked about, the quality of pitching in AAA, ABS, all the different things going on there made it even harder to sort of translate what's happening there up to the big league level. Shout out to David Fry, by the way. I don't think we've mentioned him at all.
I saw him in some pickups.
Unreal. 344, 488, 591 line now through 123 plate appearances, 6 homers, 3 steals. This is This is madness. What is
I mean, this is actually what he was doing in the minors, right? In terms of strikeout rate, and I guess it's pretty aggressive power wise. This is over
really
his
good.
keys power wise.
It sure seems like it. I mean,
maybe this is the Cleveland thing, dude.
I think ever since we had our AL Central episode with Britt, the Guardians have like an 850 winning percentage.
He has 1, 2, 3. Only 3 of his 6 homers are at home.
This is a good projection. If you look at the rest of season numbers for him,
the projection's pretty good too. Jesus.
Zips is spitting out a 256, 340, 431. Yeah, that'll play for a catcher eligible guy. Yeah.
Is he playing? He's playing like a catcher.
Right. Enough to make an impact at the positions in which he's eligible.
Is Bo Naylor losing his job?
No, because they're playing Fry a lot. First base, left field. I think of his last 8 starts, only one's been behind the plate.
Oh.
It's kind of like what they did with Eric Haas a few years ago.
He's the righty. Oh, a lot of these appearances have been PH. Start with a PH.
Yeah, but mostly left field starts, occasional first base, occasional catcher.
So he's platooning with Manzardo and some of this might go away with Quan coming back.
And they did catch a little run, a lot of lefties going back to the middle of last week too.
And Quan is back this week.
But
if he plays that well and is projected that well, maybe they send Manzardo down when Quan comes back and David Fry's the first baseman. That is totally possible.
Mind-blowing. Did not see this coming at all from David Fry. Would have been easy to pick up because nobody seemed to be on it, at least not in any sort of like big bid sort of way. A lot of drops, as I mentioned up top, injured players, guys like John Means getting a second opinion on his forearm, which is unfortunate because it was a strain that put him on the IL to begin the season. You mentioned Xander Bogaerts, the fractured shoulder. It's a long-term absence for him. We don't have an ETA just yet. Eloy Jimenez back on the IL with a hamstring strain. He's down for a month. Jordan Beck broke his hand. Jack Sawinski got demoted. So those were the primary cuts, easy sorts of cuts. I did see Casey Mize among the most dropped players, though, in 12-team mixed leagues. That was from the Waiver-Wire Online Championship. And I think for a healthy pitcher to get cut, things have to be going very poorly, given how desperate we are for pitching. The thing that's really caught me off guard, when we talked about Mize a month or so ago, I thought more Ks were coming. I thought you could look at the swinging strike rate at the time, the Arsenal changes, and say, it's there. It's going to be a 22% K rate going forward. It's actually gone down. And it just doesn't seem like he's got the pitches working quite the same way he had them coming out of spring training.
Yeah, he was the second biggest stuff plus decliner since the beginning of the season. And if you look at the ride on his fastball, it's disappearing. And guess where it's going? It's going where it was before. So I think it's just a testament to how hard it is to change. It's really hard to change.
I think he's going to have to go down to Toledo and try and figure it out there.
I mean, Matt Manning seems like a better option right now.
Yeah, I get it with Mize. I think it's because I wanted to see him turn the corner. I believed in spring training. I believed earlier in the season. And
I mean, he's a 1-1 too, so you just figure there's a lot of innate talent in there.
Yeah, you're right. But that's it for the drops. A lot of injuries, and we'll talk about Jack Sawinski in like a deep dynasty league at some point in the near future.
We have talked a lot about Jack Sawinski. You know how we feel. I think he could come back and be all right, but yeah, it wasn't going well.
Yeah. A lot of ground covered on today's show. If you want to check out the updated starting pitcher rankings, you've probably seen them already, but if you haven't, theathletic.com/rates and barrels will get you a subscription. So be sure to check those out. You can also check out that feature on Ángel Hernández that Cody Stavenhagen and Sam Blum put together last week. It'll give you a better sense of the human behind all the vitriol because there's a person in there. You can find Eno on Twitter at Enosaurus. Find me at Derek Van Riper. Find the pod at Rates and Barrels. It's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.